Hey guys, tonight we're wandering into a part of ancient history that your schoolbooks probably tiptoed around if they mentioned it at all. Not the wars, not the emperors, we're talking about the other stuff, the quiet stuff, the weird stuff, the magical stuff, the scrolls buried behind temple walls, the whispered curses scratched onto lead, the slaves who healed with herbs and didn't call it medicine, and the old women no one dared cross. Not because they were powerful, but because everyone suspected they might be. That's right, we're going deep into the world of spells, omens, protective dolls, moonlit rituals, and forgotten gods with suspiciously good hearing. This is not Harry Potter. This is magic as the ancients really lived it. Mundane, methodical, and very, very real to them. And just a warning, you probably won't survive this. Not because it's terrifying, but because it's quietly unsettling. Like realizing your neighbor has a poppy-stuffed amulet over her doorway, or that the baker's apprentice won't make eye contact on days when the moon looks wrong. It's the kind of slow, candlelit dread that gets under your skin, gently. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy these long, weird walks through the past. I'm not here for background noise, unless you want to fall asleep to a story about a haunted olive press. Also, drop a comment. What city are you watching from? And what time is it where you are right now? I love knowing where in the world you're listening from. Bonus points if you've got a candle lit, or at least a cat watching you suspiciously from the shadows. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together, into the soft, flickering, strangely comforting world of ancient magic. You are walking through the Agora of Athens, not as a philosopher nor a general, but as someone much more forgettable. Your sandals are old, your robe is dusty, the wax tablet under your arm isn't filled with poetry or grand speeches, it contains a partial record of someone's poultry dispute. You're a scribe, and a tired one. It's the 360 BCE, give or take a few years. Athens is no longer in its golden age. The theatres are still open, the market's still loud, but the walls of the city carry the wear of decades of quarrels. Sparta, Thebes, Persia, and politics that no longer inspire hope, only habit. You are known around this part of the Agora as reliable, if dull. You copy leases, you transcribe wills, you write marriage contracts that promise goats and figs. But occasionally, when the shadows stretch long and your clients speak softly, you're asked to write something else, a binding curse. You never advertise it, of course. That would be dangerous. Imperial charges are real, even in a city that tolerates a great deal of philosophical experimentation, but superstition is everywhere. Even respectable citizens believe in the evil eye, in restless spirits, in whispered words that can stain a rival's soul, and so they come to you, not the rich. They hire priests. You serve the bakers, the fishmongers, the midwives who lost a client to a younger girl across town. The curses they request are petty, often cruel, and always painfully specific. You keep a small pot of lead sheets buried beneath your floor tiles, rolled thin, cut square, enough to write legibly, barely. Your stylus, when writing these, is different. It's bone, from a chicken, you think. Though you're not sure anymore, it was gifted to you by a potter who once cursed his brother for sleeping with his apprentice. The potter later died of a fishbone lodged in his throat, and you still wonder if he deserved it. Today, a woman named Philostrate visits. She is in her 30s, unmarried, which makes her both free and vulnerable. Her family is gone, she says. The land she inherited is being claimed by a man named Timomachus, who says her father owed him silver. She wants a curse, not to kill, just to confuse. She wants his tongue tied in court, his feet to stumble, his mind to fog over. Nothing permanent, just long enough for her to win. You nod. She pays in dried figs and a length of red-dyed wool. You say thank you. She leaves. You begin. The words matter. Yes, but so does the shape. Each letter pressed carefully. No flourish. No embellishment. That would be theatrical. These must look like facts, not art. The divine doesn't need style, only clarity. Bind the tongue, the arms, the legs, the thoughts of Timomachos, son of Glaucos, you write slowly. May he stumble, may he forget, may his eyes grow heavy before the court. You write the same lines again, in a spiral pattern this time. Not for beauty. Again, that would be dangerous. but to disorient, to trap the words in a circle, with no end. When you are done, you fold the lead into a compact roll. You poke a small hole through its center with a nail, and whisper over it. You say nothing that makes sense, just fragments of older chants you once heard a Delphic pilgrim mumble while vomiting in a courtyard. That's the truth of magic here. There is no single tradition, just pieces, stolen and repeated. The next step is burying, not just anywhere. That would be ineffective. The dead must be involved. You walk the edge of the Keramikos cemetery after dusk, the tablet in a pouch around your neck. There are children buried here. Many, sadly. Children are considered more spiritually volatile, more able to carry messages between worlds. You find a grave with no marker, just a faint mound of disturbed earth. You kneel. The city snores behind you. You dig a shallow hole, drop the lead, and whisper again. It's done. Back home, you boil lentils. You wonder if Timomachos will stumble, if his lawyer will forget his lines, or if nothing will happen at all. You are not a priest. You are not a witch. You are a man with tired hands and an income barely enough for winter fuel. But people believe in what you do, even if you don't always believe it yourself. The next morning, Philastrate returns. Her trial is tomorrow. She offers you more wool, dyed darker this time. She says her friend wants a curse too, something stronger. You ask what kind. She looks down. She wants her neighbour's lover to go impotent. You stare at her for a moment, and then nod. You'll need another piece of lead. This was Athens after all. Not just a city of marble, but of murmurs, of hands pressing words into metal, of ordinary people hoping that spite written just right might ripple across the divine. And yet as you stir your lentils that night, you wonder, if so many curses were buried, why did so little seem to change? It is the next morning. You've slept poorly, as usual, not because of guilt or fear of divine punishment, but because the rats under the floorboards have grown louder. You need new wax for your tablet, and your ink smells off. Someone watered it down, probably that apprentice who sweeps the floor when he feels like it. But you have work to do. There's a steady hum beneath Athens that rarely makes it into the grand histories. It isn't political, and it isn't philosophical. It's quiet, personal, and pervasive, like a sickness or a prayer. It's magic, not the kind of thunderbolt-slinging myths the theatre sings about, but the kind practiced in corners, folded into wine jugs, whispered into the earth, and baked into clay figurines with snapped limbs. And you, an ordinary scribe, are part of it. Philostrate's friend arrives around midday. Her name is Kallianera. She is stern and sunburnt, and carries a string of garlic cloves around her wrist. She speaks plainly. Her neighbour's lover, she says, is ruining everything. The neighbour Aglaia used to visit her shop and buy dye and thread. Now she doesn't. Kallianera suspects it's because of the man. He brings wine to Aglaia. They laugh. She no longer needs cloth. She is happy. Kallianera does not want that. She wants the man to suffer. In the groin. Quietly, permanently, and if possible, mysteriously. She wants him to wake up and find that he no longer functions. That he is no longer a man. You pause. Sip some diluted wine. Nod. This is not the first impotence curse you've been asked to write. It will not be the last. You fetch a thicker piece of lead. You flatten it with your stone. Then, carefully, deliberately, you carve, I bind Eubulus, son of Nikarchos, in his loins, in his seed, in the strength of his limbs. May his desire fail. May his love turn to water. May his pride wither like grain in winter. Let Hecate bear witness. The last line invoking Hecate is bold. You usually don't name gods, but in matters of the body, people believe she listens. Torches at crossroads, dogs barking in the night. If Eubulus wakes sweating and ashamed, Kallianera will believe it worked. But belief is its own kind of power. You've seen it before. A man once accused you of stealing his luck after you scribbled his name by accident on a scrap of papyrus. He lost 2 sheep that week. Swore it was you. Swore the gods had turned their face from him because of your ink. You apologized. He still spits when he passes your doorway. The lead tablet is folded, then pierced again with a nail. Kallianera wants to bury it herself. You give her instructions. A child's grave. No one older than 12. She nods and tucks the curse into her bag next to a pomegranate. She doesn't pay you. Instead, she leaves 3 smoked eels wrapped in cloth. You don't like eel, but your apprentice will eat anything. The thing is, none of this is strange. Not in this part of Athens. Not in this time. You've seen women pour wine onto the ground while chanting syllables they barely understand. You've watched old men hang amulets over their doors carved with nonsense scripts copied from Egyptian talismans. You've read spells asking for things so small, like the return of a lost sandal. It makes you wonder how desperate someone must be to ask the underworld for help with footwear. Magic is not rare here. It's just quiet. It hums through the walls like mildew. There are categories to it, though no one agrees on them fully. The scholars, yes, even they write about this, divide it like so: apotropaic magic protective, to ward off harm, like the garlic bracelets or phallus charms hung above stables to keep away bad spirits. You once sold a charm like that for 2 olives and a kiss. Katadesmoi, binding curses, what you write, often on lead, often buried, always meant to tie someone's body or mind. Erotic spells, to inflame love, or to destroy it. Dangerous things, really. You've seen men beg to be freed from desire, even as they light incense and chant in circles. Divination, the reading of signs, entrails, stars, dreams. You stay away from this. Too many interpretations, too many contradictions. Necromancy, the darkest kind, talking to the dead. You've never done this. You don't plan to, not even for a full amphora of oil. And finally, there's everyday superstition, the glue that holds it all together, like avoiding crossroads on stormy nights, or never pouring wine with your left hand, or always spitting 3 times when someone praises your child's beauty. No one calls that magic, but it is. The line between religion and sorcery is thinner than parchment. A ritual at the temple of Demeter and a nighttime whisper into the soil might look different, but to most they serve the same purpose: to change what is into what they want it to be. The difference lies in who watches and who's allowed to speak. You remember a story your father told. He was once a boy in the countryside, near Thespia. He said an old woman there could cure warts by tying twine around your wrist and spitting on a stone. He swore it worked. You asked him how. He said, because I believed it would. You didn't understand it then. You almost do now. Back in your small room, your apprentice has drawn something on the wall in charcoal. It looks vaguely like a lion. You scold him. He laughs. He's been watching you. You suspect he knows what you're doing. One day, he might try it himself. You hope he's careful. Not everyone is. Last month, a potter named Leophantos was accused of witchcraft. Someone said he placed a curse on his rival's kiln. The rival's pots cracked in the fire. A bad omen. A worse loss of income. They brought Leophantos to court. No proof, of course. Just rumours. He was fined and publicly shamed. Not for the curse, but for pretending to be a priest. That's the charge they could make stick. That's always the danger. Not in the spell, but in being too public about it. Too successful. Too confident. Magic is supposed to fail quietly, or succeed without being seen. You think of Philostrate again. Her trial was today. You wonder if Timomachos stumbled, or if he laughed all the way through. You may never know. Your part is done. And yet, there's a strange satisfaction in these acts. Not power, exactly, but a sense of order, of control. In a city filled with politics, war and famine, there's comfort in knowing that a small piece of lead folded and buried might just bend the future even slightly. As you scrape ink from your stylus and heat your lentils over a weak flame, you realize something. It's not about whether the spells work, it's about whether people believe they might. But then again, if a spell is buried in secret, in silence, and no one sees it work, how would anyone know it failed? The years pass in Athens, though you barely notice them at first. The stalls in the agora change hands. New wine cellars arrive with sweeter vintages. Children grow up and stop running barefoot past your doorway. They walk now, some in sandals, some in borrowed boots. The young apprentice who once traced lions on your wall, he's gone. Married a potter's daughter and took your bone stylus with him. You weren't angry. You told him to take it. You knew he would. Your own hands shake now when you try to write. You copy fewer contracts. The wax on your tablet dries too quickly. Your lead supply has dwindled. Sometimes, Days go by without anyone asking for a curse, but you still keep one piece of lead under your bed. Thin, rolled, waiting. You don't remember the names of everyone you cursed for others. The lovers made jealous, the merchants made anxious, the rivals silenced in courtrooms, if only for a moment. Some of them are likely dead now, or older than you, living quietly in other districts, unaware that their name ever passed through your hands in such a way. But the lead remembers, because here's the strange truth. Those little folded tablets, the katadesmoi, they don't decay, not like papyrus, not like parchment. They lie beneath the earth, resistant to rot, untouched by time, still carrying the weight of desperation etched into them by men and women like you. Sometimes, you wonder what archaeologists of the future will think when they dig them up. They won't know you by name. You were never famous. Your handwriting was clean but unremarkable. Your ink, ordinary. Your life, barely worth footnote in the grand Athenian story. And yet, your words, pressed into lead and buried in graves, may be the only part of you that endures. The irony, of course, is that none of this was ever supposed to last. These spells were written for the moment, intended to bend time just briefly, like a whisper in a closed room. They weren't meant to be read, not even by the dead, and certainly not by the future. But they are found, centuries later, by scholars with magnifying glasses and patience. They brush dirt from the curled sheets and read your old formulas. They write articles about you. Well, not you exactly, but the type of man you were. Anonymous Athenian scribe, active circa 360 BCE. That's all you'll be, a figure in a paper, a puzzle to be solved, and yet you remain. You once wrote a curse for a boy who lost his goat. He believed his neighbour had lured it away with grain and lies. You wrote, "May the thief forget his path home, may his feet swell, may the goat cry in the night until it is returned." The goat never returned, but the boy came back a week later and said thank you. Maybe that's what magic is. Not results, not proof, but comfort. A ritual to perform when the world feels unbendable, when the gods don't answer, when the courts fail, when the man you love loves someone else, when you are afraid of disease or betrayal or poverty, and you need somewhere to put that fear. You put it in lead, and you bury it, and somehow that helps. One evening, much later in your life, a girl comes to your doorway. She's no older than 13. Her eyes are serious. She says her brother was cursed. She heard you know how to fix that. You haven't written a curse in over a year. Your joints ache. You're tired, but you tell her to sit. You boil some water. You grind dried fig into a paste. You tell her to sprinkle it at the doorway and leave a black stone on the threshold. Will it help? You don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. But the girl walks away standing straighter than when she arrived. Sometimes that's enough. In your final years, you spend more time listening than writing. People still come to you, not for curses, for stories, for memories, for old names of herbs, or the right chant to quiet a restless baby. You become something else. Not a magician, not a priest, a witness, to how people used to believe, to how people still do. Because here's what they don't tell you in the symposiums or scrolls. The most powerful kind of magic is the kind no one talks about. The whispered charm, the secret ritual, the folded lead, hidden beneath a tavern's floorboard, asking for someone to love you back, or just to suffer quietly. And while philosophers debate the nature of the soul, and politicians boast of oratory skill, you in your small dusty room still remember the spell to make someone forget their own name for one night. You don't say it aloud anymore, but you remember. Some days when you feel the heaviness in your chest, you think about writing a final curse, for the illness, for the pain, for the slowness that has crept into your body. You imagine folding that last piece of lead and placing it under your pillow, but you don't. You keep it. You want to leave something behind, not because you think it will change anything, but because one day someone may find it. Someone who reads these stories of the past and realizes that magic wasn't about fire or lightning or transformation. It was about need. It was about control. It was about loneliness. And for all your quiet years and forgettable contracts, you offered people something they could bury in the dirt and call a prayer. Maybe that's enough. And so your story ends, not with thunder or curses that scorch the earth, but with a quiet room, a folded tablet, and the memory of hundreds of forgotten names whose lives passed briefly through your trembling hands. Because long after you're gone, the lead will still whisper. You wake to the smell of ink. Not fresh ink, old clotted ink, dried on clay bowls, copper plates, bits of papyrus. The kind of ink that has sunk into everything you own. Your name is Ezra ben Menashe. You live in Alexandria, in the district where Hebrew is spoken softly, Greek more loudly, and Egyptian hieroglyphs still peek out from temple stones long since converted to Roman order. It's the early 2nd century CE. The emperor is Hadrian. His statues are everywhere. But in this street, it's the gods of healing and the spirits of fear that get more attention. You are an amulet maker, and you are tired. Your shop is barely the size of a storeroom. A shelf of copper discs, a table for grinding ink, a back corner where you press clay into molded bowls. Your fingers are always stained. There is always ash under your nails, and always, someone waiting outside the curtain with a question they won't ask too loudly. Can you make one for my son? He coughs at night. My sister lost 2 children. I don't want to lose another. I dream of snakes. Every night. What does it mean? You never advertise. There's no sign, no loud prayers. But people know. You do no harm. You promise nothing. You sell them hope. Worn around the neck, tucked into clothing, tied to bedposts with red thread. And that is enough. Today, a new woman waits. She looks like she's been standing there for some time, nervous, hair uncombed, a small linen bag in her hand. My husband is in the granary, she says. There was a fever. The others are recovering. He is not. You nod. You ask his name. His mother's name. She gives both. Was he born during the rising of Sirius, you ask? She hesitates. Yes. You pause. That's bad luck. You reach for a clay bowl. It's palm-sized, already fired. You dip a reed into thick black ink and begin writing around the rim. Not Latin, not pure Greek. A strange mix. Greek letters forming names that aren't quite readable. Some are words, others are nonsense. Syllables that mean nothing unless you believe they do. You write, protect Andreas, son of Thaleia, from the fever spirit. Let it be turned away by the one who commands winds and the flame of the north. Let it not enter his mouth, his eyes, his bones. Then you add 3 names of power, Io, Sabaoth, Adonai, borrowed from prayers older than the city itself. You blow gently to dry the ink. The woman looks down. How do I use it? Place it under his bed, you say. At night, light a lamp beside it. Pour 1 drop of wine inside before sunset. Speak his name 3 times. She nods, leaves a coin and a dried date. You don't ask if she'll return. Most don't, but some do. There's a boy Telemaios, who came to you a year ago with skin eruptions no doctor could soothe. His mother begged for help. You gave him a copper disc etched with the image of Harpocrates sitting on a lotus, finger to lips, surrounded by the phrase, "Silence keeps the sickness away." The boy stopped scratching. Was it the amulet, or the honey salve she used with it? You'll never know, but she came back to buy 5 more for her cousins. That's the thing about this work. No one calls it real, but no one dismisses it either. You know a Roman physician who laughs at your bowls until his own daughter fell ill. Then he brought a golden earring, asked you to write life, breath, strength around it, and whispered, "Don't tell my colleagues." You didn't. You don't judge. You just write. The materials you use are always changing. Clay, when times are good. Copper or bronze for those who can pay more. Sometimes parchment, folded tightly and hidden in rings. Once an amulet was requested on linen, dyed red, and stitched into the hem of a bride's dress. Each one takes time. Each one carries the same routine. Names, symbols, the occasional drawing. An eye, a snake, a scorpion with lines crossing through it, all surrounded by words that might be prayers, or might be spells, or might just be noise that sounds powerful enough to matter. There are books, yes, grimoires, collections of formulas and phrases. Some come from old temple libraries, others from Babylon, others from travelers who claim to have met desert hermits with divine secrets written in their scars. You own a few of these texts. Most are nonsense, but some feel heavier. One page you've always kept hidden speaks of the spirit of the bone cutter, a disease demon said to slip into lungs and sleep there. It gives an incantation. You've never used it. You're not sure you believe in the demon, but you believe in fear, and fear needs shape. That's what the amulet gives. There are other amulet makers in the city. You know them. You see them at the dye shops, at the butcher's stall. Some of them call what they do science. Others call it tradition. You just call it work. Once, a man came from Cyrene. He asked you to make an amulet to keep his ship from sinking. You asked what he was transporting. Stone, he said. Limestone blocks for a new temple. You asked who the temple honoured. He smiled. A new goddess. They haven't named her yet. You laughed. You made the amulet anyway. He paid in pepper. You still use that pepper in your stew, and the city moves on. Outside, the priests march in procession. Someone sacrifices a bull. The smell wafts down your alley. Thick and sharp. The woman across the way burns incense for Serapis. A child tosses an egg into the harbour and wishes for his father's safe return. The air is heavy with belief. You watch it all from your doorway, ink drying on your fingertips. And you wonder, as you always do the amulets truly protect, or do they simply give people a shape for their hope? The woman does not return. Andreas, the man with the fever, might have died, or he might have healed. You will likely never know. That's how this business works. People come in moments of desperation, grief before clarity, panic before acceptance, and once the panic passes, they vanish back into the noise of the city. Sometimes they leave payment, sometimes they don't, sometimes they leave a story. You keep all three, but the city doesn't stop. In Alexandria, everything breathes at once. Sand, sea, and smoke all settle into the same creases. The Roman grain ships offload at the docks. The scholars pace under the shade of the library's colonnades, their robes brushing dust over old stones. The fish sellers shout in 3 languages, and in a side street shaded by linen canopies, you continue writing on clay. You think of your father. He was not an amulet maker. He sold ink. Just ink. Red and black, sometimes green, when he could afford copper dust. He had no head for magic. He couldn't remember more than a line or 2 of scripture, and he feared temples. But he taught you how to grind ash and oil and pigment into something that could speak across time. He used to say, "Ink doesn't lie," but it often forgets. You never fully understood what he meant. You think of him when you etch a copper disc that afternoon. It's for a man named Heron, middle-aged, shaking hands, a tremor he blames on bad spirits. His doctor says it's just old age. He doesn't believe the doctor. Doctors don't make promises, only diagnoses. You draw a lion on the disc. You add 4 magic words in a circular loop, words that mean nothing but feel like something. Anazaphonecta, Tetfia, Basileus, Lamia. Then you whisper a quiet phrase in Aramaic as you heat the metal over a lamp flame. Huron pays in silver. Enough to buy you a week of meals. Enough to keep working. The truth is, this is how you survive. Not on belief, on commerce. Magic is a trade like any other. People pay for something to hold in their palm when their child is sick, when their marriage sours, when their dreams are filled with teeth. They want something physical, because pain is physical and grief is heavy. Hope needs to be heavy too, or it won't balance anything out. And you, Ezra ben Menashe, are a merchant of that weight. There is danger though, not from the authorities. Not exactly. The Roman government is inconsistent when it comes to magic. Some emperors ban it. Others consult astrologers at dinner. It depends on the mood of the forum, the stars, and whether or not the praetor's wife is fond of talismans. But even when legal, magic is never fully safe. There are jealous clients. There are rival charm sellers who claim you stole their formulas. There are those who believe your amulets cause illness, not protect against it. And worse, there are the wealthy men who think they can own what you make. Last month, a Roman centurion named Lucius came to you. Broad shoulders, soft eyes. He wanted an amulet to keep him from dying in battle. You told him nothing prevents death. He smiled and gave you a gold coin. Then give me something that will make the gods think twice. You wrote 3 protective names on papyrus and folded it into a tiny bronze locket. You said nothing as he placed it under his armour. He thanked you. A week later, his servant returned with the locket bent, blood-stained, opened. He was dead. The servant said nothing, just dropped it on your table and left. You placed the locket in a clay jar and sealed it. You do not reuse charms, even failed ones, especially failed ones. Failure is part of the work. There are others like you, hidden workers of protection. You know of a woman near the Jewish quarter who embroiders names into pillowcases for new mothers. You know a Greek-Egyptian cook who buries copper knives near doorways to repel plague spirits. There's an old man by the necropolis who sells wind charms made of knotted reed. None of you call it magic. Not out loud. You call it what people want to hear. Protection, blessing, tradition. But it is magic. Of the quiet kind. The small kind. The kind with dust under its nails and no interest in fame. You once met a man who said he used to be a priest in Memphis. Long ago. He'd fallen out of favour. Too many gods, he said. Not enough worshippers. He now carves scarabs for sailors. He told you that the most powerful charms are never worn. They're whispered and forgotten. You believe him. One night, a knock comes at your curtain. It's a boy, no older than 10, skin pale, voice trembling. He says his sister won't wake. She's not dead, but she won't open her eyes. You take a bowl. You write. You include the name Heka, the ancient word for magic itself. Older than Latin, older than the sand outside the city. You finish the charm. You hand it to the boy. He clutches it. Will it work? He asks. You look at him, and for once you say the truth. I don't know, because you don't. You never do. But you made something for him to carry. That's what matters. The next day he returns. She woke up, he says. She asked for water. You nod. He smiles and runs off. You say nothing. But that night, you write his name, just his name, on a scrap of parchment and place it in a jar. You don't write anything else, just the name, because you want him to live a long time, because you don't want to forget him, because part of you still believes that writing something down makes it real. That's what amulets are. In the end, an attempt to carve permanence into a world that forgets too easily. The city forgets. The gods forget. People forget. But ink doesn't, at least not right away. And when it fades, what happens to the protections we can no longer read? The curtain that covers your doorway hangs lower. The light in your shop is dimmer, more yellowed. The shelf of copper charms is mostly empty. Your eyes blur when you write for too long, and your fingers, once precise enough to etch spells into rings, now shake when you try to thread a needle. But you still wake before dawn. You still grind your ink. You still wait. There are fewer clients than before. Younger women go to newer shops, where amulets are sold already made, mass-produced, stamped, blessed by priests for hire who wear clean robes and smile too easily. You don't blame them. The world changes. Even fear has modern tastes. But some still come to you. One morning, a stranger arrives. A scholar from Antioch, sharp-voiced, robes too clean for this part of town. He wants to purchase genuine magical texts, the old kind, he says, the real kind. The kind written in blood and ash, filled with the names of hidden gods. You show him your clay bowls. He frowns. He wants something more dramatic. You nod. You reach beneath the shelf. You pull out a worn scroll, one you've copied from memory, over decades in quiet evenings when no one knocked. The script is uneven, the parchment cracked at the edges, but the words are careful and old. The spells are ones you've never used, not for clients, not even for yourself. They feel heavy. He holds it up, squints, and finally nods. How much? You name a price lower than what it's worth, but enough to buy you rest. He leaves, satisfied. You are left in silence. That evening, you open the small jar under the floorboard. The names are still there, bits of parchment, each with a name, some with dates, a few with symbols, nothing grand, nothing powerful, just a list of lives that passed through your doorway. Ptolemios, Heron, Thaleia, the boy with the quiet sister, dozens more, people who needed help, people who needed hope. You never charged for the parchment names. You wrote them when your hands weren't busy, as a kind of record, not for the gods, not for protection, just so someone remembered. You wonder what will happen to the jar when you're gone. Maybe no one will find it. Maybe someone will, years later, and throw it away without reading. Or maybe if the gods are in a certain mood, someone will open it, one dusty afternoon, and try to read the names aloud, mispronounce them, wonder who they were, wonder who you were. You will not be famous. There will be no statue, no temple, no scroll with your full name in gold. But maybe that's fine, because what you offered was never spectacle. It was never meant for the city square or the ears of emperors. You offered small, quiet anchors for people adrift in their own daily storms. And in a way, those anchors still hold. In other parts of Alexandria, under cracked foundations and forgotten wells, your clay bowls remain, fired strong, not easily broken, covered in names and phrases no longer spoken aloud but still legible to anyone who knows what they're looking for. Archaeologists centuries from now might find one. They'll label it protective incantation vessel. They'll file it in a museum drawer, take photographs, write papers. They might debate the pronunciation of the divine names. They'll never know who wrote it. They won't know that your lamp smoked when you carved it, that your wrist ached, that you muttered a small line from Psalm 121 as you etched the word protect. They won't know that someone lit a candle next to it and whispered a sick child's name. They'll only see the vessel. But the bowl remembers. That's the strange immortality of magic. Not glory, not gods, but persistence. In clay, in copper, in a name written quietly, folded, and placed beneath a mattress. You remember once reading that words are breath, shaped and stored. If that's true, then each charm you made still holds a piece of someone's breath. Their fear, their plea. You wonder when the last amulet crumbles, when the last name fades, does the hope vanish too? Or does it go somewhere else? There's no answer. Of course not. There never was. But you sit back in your chair, watch the last of the daylight fall across the shelves and think, you did your work. Not perfectly, not always honestly, but carefully, with intention, with ink and ash, and the belief that sometimes, just sometimes, fear can be quieted by something small and sacred, a charm, a bowl, a name. The wind brushes against your curtain, you close your eyes, and beneath the floor, in the jar no one knows about, the names wait patiently, still spelled correctly, still whispered into, still yours, not the top floor. Those are the worst. Thin walls, leaky roofs, and summer heat that makes the ceilings drip. But not the bottom either, where the shop fronts roar all day, and the fishmonger's cart leaves puddles. No, you live on the third floor. It's just high enough to avoid the stink of the streets, and just low enough to avoid the collapse when the rains come. Your name is Livia. You are 32, a mother, a wife, a daughter of no one important. You live in Ostia, the Roman port city. It is always loud, always damp, always shifting. The building is an insula, a Roman apartment block. You live in 2 rooms with cracked plaster and low ceilings. The walls whisper when it rains. The floorboards creak like tired bones. The toilet is a shared pit down the corridor, and the water is fetched from the cistern in the courtyard. You know everyone on your floor by their footsteps. Your husband Aulus works the candle vats. His hands always smell of wax. Your children, Lucilla and Marcus, chase rats in the hall when you're not looking. Your neighbour, Minucia, once saw a ghost in her basin. She hasn't touched it since. And every evening, before you light the cooking fire, you place a coin behind the stove. It is not for taxes. It is not for savings. It is for the demon. Not a demon. Not in the way modern minds might imagine. Not a devil. Not a monster. Just something small. Something hungry. A household spirit that watches. That listens. That must be fed. Every Roman home has one. Even the rich ones in marble houses with statues and fountains. But yours is a cheap spirit. Probably a little vengeful. It lives in the cracked corner behind the stove. You call it him. Your husband calls it nonsense. But he doesn't move the coin. The practice came from your grandmother, who came from nowhere special. She said that if you don't feed the house spirit, the milk will spoil and the baby will cry for no reason. She was right. When the coin was forgotten, once the pot boiled over for no reason, the fire hissed. Your daughter slipped on the spill and bruised her arm. Since then, you never forget. Sometimes you leave more than coins. A crust of bread, a few drops of wine, a thread of dyed wool. Never leave salt, your grandmother warned. Salt offends. You don't know why, but you listen. In Ostia, these little rituals are everywhere. A smudge of ash above a doorway, knotted twine under a mattress, garlic hung not for flavour, but to chase shadows. None of it is taught in school. No one writes it down. But everyone knows, especially the women. You remember once when Lucilla had night terrors, screaming in her sleep, limbs twitching. The doctor said she was growing. Your neighbor said she was being chased. You listened to both. Then, one night, you tucked a scrap of red cloth under her pillow, folded 3 times and kissed before bed. She stopped screaming. Your husband said it was coincidence. You agreed, but you kept the cloth. Every wall in your building has cracks. Every crack might be a doorway. Spirits don't always enter like people. They slip between things. That's why you clean the corners with rosemary. That's why you sweep toward the threshold and spit 3 times when the fire won't catch. The priest downtown says the gods protect the righteous. You believe they're busy, so you rely on what you know. Minucia, the neighbor with the haunted basin, has a jar of dried figs in her cupboard. Not to eat, just to ward off illness. She says the demon likes figs. Her children haven't been sick all winter. Coincidence? Perhaps. But what is faith, if not the accumulation of useful coincidences? The building itself feels alive. You feel it shift at night, when the wind pushes against the shutters, when the fire flickers without warning, when a bowl falls for no reason. These are not omens, just reminders that something is always watching. You're not afraid. That's important. The spirit doesn't want fear, it wants acknowledgement. So you speak aloud when you place the coin. Just a whisper. Stay fed, stay calm, leave us in peace. Your son Marcus asks you why you talk to the wall. You tell him it's a game. He laughs and starts leaving coins too. You don't stop him. There is a small shelf beside the stove, above the soot stains. That's your shrine. It's not impressive. A lump of clay shaped like a woman's face, a half-burnt wick, an oyster shell, a carved finger made of wood. They don't match. They don't belong to any one god, but they listen. At least that's what you choose to believe. You once asked a visiting priest if household spirits were real. He frowned. He said, "The gods are many, but not everything people believe is a god." You agreed. But that night, you left an extra coin, just in case. Because here's the truth no one says out loud. The wealthier the house, the quieter the rituals. They can afford priests, augurs, sacrifices. You have bread crusts and ash lines. And yet, you suspect your magic is older, more honest. Because when Lucilla fell ill last summer, and the physician offered barley water, you whispered the same words your grandmother used. Not loud, not even intelligible, just syllables passed down through mouths with too many missing teeth to pronounce things properly. She recovered. You don't claim credit, but you whispered them again, just in case. Because in a city of marble temples and public altars, you know where true fear lives. It lives in bedrooms, in sick rooms, in cupboards where mice creep and the grain goes sour. And that's where the demon waits, not to harm, but to remind, to be fed, to be respected, and maybe, just maybe, to protect. You sit beside the hearth one night and watch your son sleep. A storm lashes the shutters. Water drips through the ceiling in the corner. But the coin is there. The fire is steady. And you whisper the words again, not because they work, not because they don't, but because they are the only words you know that make the fear feel a little smaller. And in the silence that follows, you wonder, if no one speaks to the spirits anymore, will they simply go away, or will they wait, forever, in the cracks? You are boiling beans. They take longer than usual. The flame is low. The wax your husband brought home yesterday burns unevenly. Cheap stuff from a rushed vat. But it will do. You place another coin behind the stove. Third one this week. You whisper again. Not the full chant, just the bones of it. Stay fed. Stay calm. Keep the children quiet. Keep the sickness from the walls. You've never written the words down. They were never written down to begin with. You heard them from your grandmother, who heard them from hers, who likely changed them, forgot pieces, added new ones when old syllables cracked apart. That's how real magic works. It evolves. Not in temples, but in kitchens. Not on scrolls, but in mouths. Your neighbor Minucia visits. Her eyes are wide. Her hands tremble. Her middle daughter saw a shadow in the water basin again. The same basin. The same corner. It blinked, she whispers. You give her rosemary. A piece of knotted red thread. Tell her to tie the thread around the leg of the bed. and burn the rosemary in 3 pinches before sunrise. She asks what to say. You shrug. Whatever feels heavy in your chest. She nods. That's how it always is. No fixed words. Just the burden you need lifted. You watch her walk back down the corridor. Her steps are quicker now. She feels safer. That's enough. For now. Later that day, the fishmonger's wife, Petronia, leans over your balcony with news. A young boy 2 floors up has died. Fevers. Fast. His mother claims he was cursed. You nod. You say nothing more. There's nothing to say. The city is always dying, and magic, even here, cannot stop it. But it can make it feel less random, less cruel. The next morning, you add a second coin behind the stove. You don't tell your husband. He would only roll his eyes. He believes in rituals, but only the public kind. Sacrifices at the Temple of Hercules, prayers to Fortuna at the Forum. The big visible acts that make the gods nod, and the neighbours approvingly murmur. But your gods, if they even are gods, live in corners. They don't need marble. They need meals. That evening, you prepare your daughter's hair for sleep. You braid in 1 strand of black thread, not decorative, protective. You don't say it aloud, but she knows. She's 9. She's already begun placing stones by her own window ledge. 1 smooth, 1 chipped, 1 white. You asked her where she learned that. She said, from the wall. You said nothing. Maybe she's right, because this apartment isn't just brick and plaster. It's a container of lives, and lives leave impressions. Footsteps never heard again. Laughter once loud, now gone. Whispers that still feel warm in the corners where they were last spoken. You remember your first week here. Before your children. Before the second room was yours. You slept on a mat with your husband and heard something scrape against the far wall. You thought it was rats. But in the morning, a line of salt had formed across the threshold. Neither of you had spilled any. You swept it away, whispering apology. You didn't want to offend anything. Not in a new space. Not in a place with so much memory, under the floorboards. Ostia isn't Rome. It has less grandeur, less politics, but it breathes more openly. Its apartments sag, its balconies lean, its people speak with their whole bodies, and its women keep the city stitched together with string and breath and superstition. You've seen it, the baker's daughter who prays into her flour, the old man who marks his wine casks with crescent moons, the midwife who rubs garlic on her feet before deliveries. None of this is public, none of this is written, but it's all part of the city, part of the rhythm. You once tried to ask a real scholar, a visiting friend of your cousin's, why people believed in demons, in household spirits, in fire whispers and doorway salt. He said, it is the result of ignorance, a lack of education, an inability to reason. You thanked him. Then you went home and left honey by the stove, because he would leave. But your children would stay, and they needed more than reason. They needed comfort, and maybe protection. And so you begin to teach your daughter the words, not all at once, just a few at a time. You teach her how to knot thread 3 times while thinking of the person she loves most. You teach her how to blow softly across the coals before lighting the flame. You teach her how to whisper thanks to the wall just in case the thing inside is still listening. She asks, is it a god? You say, no. Then what is it? You pause, then say, something that wants us to remember it. She nods. She accepts it. She is already learning. Minucia's daughter has stopped speaking again. Minucia is afraid. She burns rosemary until her eyes sting. She knots her clothing. She draws eyes in charcoal above the doorway. Nothing helps. She asks if you'll come speak to the basin. You do. You kneel beside it. It's an ordinary basin. Iron, dented, faintly stained with soap residue. But it does feel cold. Not temperature. Just presence. You light a wick. You press your hand to the floor. You say the old phrase. Not loudly. Not in Latin. Not in Greek. Just in the small in-between tongue that your grandmother used when she wanted to speak below the floorboards. We live with you. We eat beside you. We leave our scraps. Leave our children. You open your eyes. Nothing changes. You thank the space. You leave. 3 days later, the child laughs again. Minucia thanks you with lentils and wine. You don't know if it was your words, or time, or warmth, but Minucia believes it was you, And that makes it real, because in places like this, third-floor, fish-smelling, mold-stained corners of empires, belief is the first brick in survival. And the only magic that matters is the kind people carry in silence. So as night falls and your daughter lays her stones on the window ledge again, you feel it too, that flicker of something watching. Not cruel, not holy, just present. And you whisper to it, stay, be fed, leave the roof standing, let the children sleep. And then you ask yourself, not for the first time, if we ever stopped believing, would the walls collapse or just grow quiet? Time slips differently in this building. Some days are loud and long, filled with spilled oil, shouting neighbours, broken shutters flapping like angry wings. Others are soft, short, smudged with laughter and bean stew, and the sleep-heavy limbs of children after they've run too many stairs. But the building stays. It groans, it sighs, it leaks, and it remembers. You don't leave coins as often anymore. Not every night. Not because you've stopped believing, but because the ritual now lives in your bones. You think about it when you wash lentils, when you check the stove, when the wind whistles down the corridor and makes the lamp flicker. Your daughter, Lucilla, now 13, has taken over the coin. She says nothing, just sets it down, straightens it with 2 fingers, and whispers a sound you don't recognize. You don't ask where she learned it. She won't tell you. Maybe the wall told her, maybe the wind, maybe her own fear. The source doesn't matter, only the offering does. The younger tenants, newer to the building, laugh at such things. They bang pots, complain about drafts, light incense for the wrong gods. They say things like, daemons are for poor villagers, not Roman citizens. But their rooms still creak in the night. Their water still runs bitter, and some of them quietly, when no one watches, slip rosemary into their pillows or salt beneath their door frames, because belief once placed is never fully uprooted. Your husband, Owlus, is older now too. His hands hurt after long days at the vats. He groans louder when he sits, but even he has stopped mocking the coin. He places it sometimes if you forget. He won't admit it, but he does it, especially when Lucilla is sick, or when the neighbours fight too loudly, or when he finds a bird dead on the stoop and doesn't like the way its eyes look. No one says curse, but the word hangs in the walls. You once considered moving, a richer neighbourhood, a lower floor, more light. But the idea unsettled you, not because you fear change, but because this space knows you. You have left too much in the corners to walk away from them now. There are moments when you think about the past. Your grandmother, wrinkled hands rubbing oil into the lintels. Your mother, gone too soon, but known for her threadwork and her habit of whispering into boiling pots. You wonder what stories your daughter will carry, what rituals she'll forget, which ones she'll remake entirely, because that's what women have always done. When scrolls speak of emperors and temples and golden rituals, they leave out the women who spit 3 times before opening a cupboard, who save onion skins to burn on nights when dreams are bad, who sew pebbles into the hems of children's tunics, not to weigh them down, but to keep them from floating too far away. One day, Lucilla will be a mother, and perhaps on some ordinary evening, she will place a coin beside her stove in a building not yet built, and she will not remember why, only that her mother did it, and that once, long ago, in a city filled with stone and smoke and shouting, it seemed to help. Minucia has grown quieter too. Her haunted basin cracked last month. She threw it out. She didn't replace it. Now she burns lemon peel in a bowl and stirs water with a copper spoon before bed. You ask her what it's for. She says, it keeps the cold from dreaming too loudly. You nod. That sounds about right. Even the city itself feels more fragile lately. Ostia changes every year. New shrines, new statues, new gods with strange names arriving on ships with painted sails. But the walls stay the same. You trace your fingers along the shelf beside the stove. The clay face is still there. So is the oyster shell, the burnt wick, the carved wooden finger, offerings from long ago, still breathing in the space they made. You don't know how long they'll last. The building might collapse one day. It's old. One hard storm, and the roof could fall, or fire, or law. But maybe the shelf will remain, and if someone finds it, centuries from now, perhaps they'll wonder why a coin was placed behind a scorched wall, why a string was knotted 13 times and buried under a tile, why someone smeared ash into a doorway and wrote no name above it. The archaeologists will guess. They'll say it was religious, or superstitious, or decorative. They won't understand that these were conversations, private, intimate, wordless conversations between mothers and walls and fears and fire, that these were not grand beliefs, just small hopes, placed gently, night after night. You sit down. Lucilla has left a bowl of water on the sill again. For the moon, she says. You let her. The wind hums through the gap in the shutters. You close your eyes, and you say, not aloud but deep within, we see you, we fed you, we need you no longer, but you may stay. You say this, not because you believe the daemon will vanish, but because you want it to rest, like you. And as the fire dims and the rain begins tapping the roof tiles, you ask yourself one final time, if no one remembers these rituals in the future, will they disappear, or will they wait, patient, silent in the walls of whatever home comes next? You begin each day before the sun, not because you want to, but because the clay demands it. You are called Dion, no surname, no title. You are a potter in Corinth, a city rebuilt, restructured, and still unsettled. Part Greek, part Roman, always dusted in the scent of broken stones. You live alone. You are not young. Your workshop is modest. One kiln, one bench, one cracked water basin, and an old cat that doesn't belong to you but refuses to leave. She sleeps in the corner where the heat from the oven never fully fades. You make bowls, not fine amphorae for temples, not painted treasures for noble tables, just bowls, everyday ones, the kind that hold lentils or grain, or the bones of small birds, the kind that get dropped and replaced, cheap enough for the market, sturdy enough for use. You are not rich, but the clay has fed you, and lately it has begun to speak, not aloud, not clearly, but in patterns, in shifts of temperature. In the strange way some bowls come out of the kiln with faces you never carved. You never tell anyone this. Of course not. But you see it. It began months ago. A glaze, once smooth, cracked in the shape of an eye. Another bowl, completely blank, emerged with a faint outline like the shadow of a smile pressed from the inside. At first you blamed the clay, then the fire, then your age, but the shapes continued, always when you worked in silence, always when the wind outside the shop changed direction suddenly, and always when you felt loneliest. The city doesn't see you. You are part of the street, part of the smell of smoke and dust and baked earth. But that's the thing about solitude. It can become an invitation. Your old neighbour, Kirillos, used to say, ghosts love two things, emptiness and the smell of bread. You don't bake bread, but you do leave out pieces. Not for you, for the thing in the kiln. You don't know why you do it, just that it feels respectful. The kiln is ancient. You didn't build it. It came with the workshop years ago, when you inherited the space after your cousin's drowning. He left no will, no debts, just a shelf of cracked pots and an unused name. The kiln has always burned oddly, hot on one side, weak on the other. No matter how you adjust the fire or rearrange the fuel, it always favours the left. You now fire in half batches. It's easier than fighting it. You tell yourself it's just physics. But then the whispers began. Not words, not quite, just hissing, rhythmic, like breath caught between bricks. Once, when the city celebrated Saturnalia and your street filled with drunk laughter, you stayed behind to finish an urgent order. That night, the kiln hissed your name. Dion. You dropped the brush. You didn't light the fire again that evening. But you came back the next day. Of course you did. Because fear doesn't last. Curiosity does. And you were lonely. That's what it's really about, isn't it? Not magic. Not ghosts. Just loneliness wearing a mask. You begin keeping a journal. Not a real one. Just lines on broken shards. You write questions. Are you real? Do you know my name? Do you want something? You leave them inside the unlit kiln. Some days you return to find the shards shifted. Other times, nothing. You know it might be rats, or the cat, but you don't check. You prefer the possibility. And the pots continue to change. One day, a client returns a bowl. I didn't order this, she says. You look. It's yours. Clearly. But inside the base, faintly glazed, is the outline of a child's hand. You did not put it there. You never allow children in the shop. You say nothing. You refund her. You keep the bowl. You begin setting aside the odd ones. A shelf in the back now holds 23 pots, each with something unusual, a swirl that wasn't there when you dipped the glaze, a line of symbols you never wrote, one with 3 dots perfectly aligned like stars. You dream more, vivid dreams, a room filled with shelves, pots whispering, a face pressed against a kiln's opening, smiling, a hand on your shoulder, warm, heavy. You never see the full figure, just glimpses, and when you wake, the kiln is always warm, even if you didn't fire it. You ask Kyrillos casually, over olives, whether anyone died in this shop. He shrugs. Everyone dies somewhere. Then he leans in. There's a story, he says, about a potter who lived alone, long ago, fired a bowl that cracked in the shape of a god's face. He refused to destroy it, said it spoke. He was never seen again. You laugh. But later that night, you find a crack running across the newest pot, like a face, not smiling, just waiting. You should be frightened, but you're not. You feel seen, and in the silence of your workshop, surrounded by bowls that may or may not carry memories not your own, you begin to ask yourself, if something is watching me through the kiln, what is it waiting for? The shelf in the back now holds 32 bowls. You've stopped selling the strange ones. You don't fire them for clients anymore. These are different, private. You still make your regular batches, market bowls, vinegar jars, feeding dishes, but the others, they are shaped in silence, always after sundown, always alone. The cat watches you from the shadowed corner, tail wrapped around her paws. She never approaches the shelf, never sleeps near it. She knows something. You've begun to notice patterns. The bowls that whisper, yes, you're willing to use that word now, always share certain traits. They're fired on nights when the city is quiet. They're shaped quickly, hands moving before the mind catches up. They always cool too fast. The glaze crackles like cooled breath. One evening, you try something different. You don't shape the bowl at all. You simply place a lump of clay on the wheel, spin it, and let your hands hover just above, never touching. When the wheel slows, you press your palm into the top. Then you fire it. No design, no function, just an impression. It comes out hollowed, burned on one side. When you tap it, it hums. No bowl has ever hummed before. You place it on the shelf. You write a single word on a shard beside it. Why? The next morning, it's cracked down the center, as if answering. The city outside continues as always. Corinth is full of processions, amphorae, and politics. You pay them no mind. You've become a strange man now. Not feared, not famous, just watched. The neighbors think your kiln is failing. The smoke rises oddly. Once it curled into a spiral that stayed in the sky for half a minute. A passing priest of Hermes asked if you needed purification. You said, I'm past that. He didn't ask again. You remember when you were young, how your father used to tell stories of household spirits, lares and mans, things that lived in the cracks. You thought he was trying to scare you into cleaning, but now, you understand. Everything left alone too long begins to listen, and everything shaped with intention becomes a door. You begin sleeping beside the kiln, just a straw mat, a blanket. You tell yourself it's for the warmth, but really, it's because the dreams are stronger here. You dream of hands, dozens, shaping clay in perfect silence. The same bowl again and again, one with no base, just an open mouth. You wake sweating. The cat is sitting on your chest. The kiln is warm. You haven't lit it in days. One morning, a bowl vanishes. You search everywhere. It's not in the stack, not in the storage room, not even among the market goods. It was one of the early ones, etched faintly with letters you didn't write. Letters that resembled ancient Peloponnesian dialect, but slightly wrong, bent, as if the letters had been through something. You check the windows. No signs of theft, just absence. That night you shape another bowl. You try to replicate the design. You fail. The glaze refuses to settle. The shape collapses. You feel panic. Not over the bowl, over the voice. You feel as if something has gone silent, and silence now feels wrong. The next day, Kyrillos returns. He looks worse than before, thinner, eyes cloudy. You pour him watered wine and he leans close. He whispers, I saw something in your window. Late last night. A face. You ask what kind. He says, yours. You haven't been to the window in 3 nights. He leaves without finishing the wine. You find yourself whispering again when you shape. Not words you understand, just fragments. Names you don't recognize. You begin to wonder, are you remembering someone else's language, or speaking your own backward? You shape a new bowl. This one fights you. The clay resists. Your hands slip. It collapses twice. But on the 3rd try, it stays up. You fire it. No markings, no cracks, just a dull red surface. When it cools, you place it on the shelf. The others seem to lean toward it. You try not to notice, but you do. You sit by the shelf for hours, not touching, just breathing. You begin writing your own name on shards and tucking them into bowls. Then, just the letter D. Then nothing at all. Only the impression of your thumb. One night, the kiln door swings open on its own. You see nothing inside, just coals, long dead. But the heat brushes your face, and in that breath of warmth, you feel something familiar. Not love, not comfort, but recognition. Like someone you've known forever, finally remembering your name. You leave a bowl at the doorstep of the workshop. No markings, just glazed in black. You never see who takes it. But in the morning there's a new bowl inside. Unfired, cold, wet clay. Already shaped. Already etched. You did not make it. You press a finger to the rim. It hums. And in that hum you feel a question. Are you ready? You don't answer. Not with words. You fire the bowl. When it's done, you place it on the shelf. 33. The cat doesn't come near. You stop opening the front door. You begin sleeping by the kiln every night. Your market orders go unfulfilled. People stop knocking. The fire never goes out now, and the shelf is full. But still you wonder, if I shape something I do not understand, is it still mine, or does it belong to the thing that needed hands? You no longer remember when you made your last market bowl. The fire is no longer for customers. It burns now only for what comes in the dark. You don't shape them anymore, not truly. You wake and find the clay ready, wet, soft, centered on the wheel. You sit, hands hovering. Sometimes you touch it, sometimes you don't. The bowl spins, and something emerges, shapes that are not yours, lines you've never learned, glazes that crack into letters you cannot read but feel in your teeth. Each one goes to the shelf. 33 became 40, then 45, then 50. You stopped counting when the top shelf collapsed. Now they sit on the floor, in rows, in circles. They do not gather dust. They do not break. When you press your ear to one, it hums. A different note in each. You do not speak to people anymore. Kirillos moved away. He left no word, only a broken broom and a half-eaten jar of figs. The cat is still here. Older now. Thin. She stares at the bowls but does not touch them. You still eat. Barely. You still sleep. Rarely. But you work. If it can be called work. It is something between prayer and surrender. The fire no longer needs you. It lights itself. At night you see shapes in it. Flickers of hands not your own. Sometimes faces. Never full. Always almost. You think of your cousin, whose kiln this once was. You think, did it start with him too? Did he vanish into the clay, piece by piece, until only his signature remained? You found one of his old shards the other day, pressed into a bowl you don't remember shaping. It had your name. But in a script so ancient it curved like wind. You used to write your name to claim something. Now you recognize it as a question. Who are you when the fire shapes you back? You stop writing altogether. There is no need. Each new bowl is signed already, with something deeper than words. Sometimes you wake to find them stacked in new patterns, spirals, ladders, circles with one broken rim. Once, you found them arranged like steps. You did not climb them. You sat. You listened. There is one bowl you keep separate. Small, unfired. You never shaped it. It was simply there, waiting. You've tried to fire it 5 times. The flames always die. The kiln will not accept it. It sits on your workbench, perfectly round, slightly warm. You touch it each morning. It calms your hands. You do not know what it is for, but it watches you. You dream more now. Always the same room. 1,000 shelves. No walls, just bowls. some cracked, some filled with light, others filled with ash, all humming. A woman waits at the center. You never see her face. You know she is not alive, but not dead either. She asks no questions. She only places a bowl in your hands and steps back. You always drop it. You always wake up. One night, you stay awake. You wait. The fire hums. The bowls vibrate. Quiet, low, almost a sigh. You walk to the shelf. You take the oldest one, the one with the child's handprint. You hold it to your chest. It is warm. It beats. Once. Twice. Then silence. You leave it outside, by the threshold. At dawn, it is gone. In its place, a slip of papyrus, blank, except for one fingerprint in ash. You match it to your own. It does not match. The next evening, the kiln does not light. You sit beside it. You place your hands on the clay wheel. Nothing happens. You whisper. Stillness. For the first time in weeks, the fire stays cold. You are afraid, not of the dark, not of death, but of quiet. You press your thumb into the raw clay bowl, the small one, the watcher. The kiln sparks, a flicker, enough. You place the bowl inside. No glaze, no markings, just the weight of it. You close the door. You do not look back. You sleep deeply that night. For the first time, you do not dream. When you wake, the bowl is gone. So is the fire. So is the cat. You step outside. The city is louder than you remember. You pass people who do not see you. You speak, and no one answers. Your hands are clean. Too clean. No clay beneath your nails. No stain of glaze on your wrists. You walk to the market. No one sells bowls like yours. You walk home. The door to your workshop is closed. You knock. A boy answers. He has your eyes. You say nothing. He does not see you. You vanish. Somewhere, in a room you no longer inhabit, a shelf holds a bowl. Inside it is a fingerprint, and a hum, and a question. If we pour all of ourselves into what we make, where do we go when the making is done? You are tired of praying to the sky. You've tried speaking softly, loudly. Once, even drunk, you shouted at the clouds. They didn't answer. Your name is Heron. You are 61, and your vineyard in the hills of Magna Gracia is dying. The leaves have turned brown too early. The vines twist in strange directions. The grapes, when they come at all, are shriveled, like they were cursed before they were born. Your father planted these vines. You have tended them for 40 years, and now they do not listen to you. Worse, they seem to avoid you. You've changed the soil. You've called in a physician of plants from the town. He said the roots were tired, that the sun was stronger than it used to be, that maybe the gods had withdrawn their favor from this side of the hill. You paid him anyway. You didn't believe him, because across the ravine, just 2 slopes over, your neighbor's vineyard thrives. Mendandros, 35, smiles like vinegar. He sings when he works. His grapes grow fat and green. His barrels overflow. And at market he has begun offering advice. Unsolicited. You hear the whispers in town. Heron's vines are failing. Too old. Doesn't rotate his soil. Menandros is lucky. Or maybe clever. You know what they mean. They mean cursed. You don't believe in curses. At least you didn't used to. But now, the patterns feel too deliberate. The lowest row of vines, always the strongest, went first. Then the 2 to the west. Then the patch nearest the path that borders Menandros' land. It spread like a sickness, and you began to feel it in your bones. You walk the rows each morning now. Not to work, but to look. To see what's missing. To count the leaves that should be there but aren't. And every time you pass that western border, you feel it. A pull. Not physical. Not cold. Just unnatural. As if something is leaning against your land. Your son says it's superstition. He lives in town, works with olive traders, knows the price of tin in Iberia, doesn't know the feel of dry earth under the nail. You stop telling him things, but you do tell the old woman. She lives at the edge of the wood, where the trees change shape in winter. She sells herbs, none of them labelled. People say she once lived in a temple. Others say she buried 2 husbands and swore off love. You don't care which is true. You care that she listens. She invites you in. She smells of vinegar and thyme. She makes you tea that burns your tongue. You tell her about the vines, about Mendros, about the silence of the sky. She nods. She says, "He planted something." You blink. "What kind of plant?" She smiles. "It's not kind. Not a plant, a word." She shows you a bundle of twigs tied with black string. "You need to bury this, at the foot of your first vine, at dusk, with wine." You hesitate. "This is folk nonsense." She shrugs. "So is faith." You pay her in cheese and a half jug of sour wine. That evening, you do as she said. You wait for the sun to kiss the hills. You dig a small hole under the first vine. Barely a vine anymore, just a twist of sorrow. You place the bundle. You pour the wine. You whisper her words, though you do not understand them. The wind changes. You feel silly. You go inside. You sleep badly. The next day, one leaf is green. Just one. You stare at it for a long time. You touch it. It does not fall. Coincidence? Maybe. But the next day, 2 more. Then 5. Then 7. It slows after that. But it doesn't reverse. Still, it's enough. You return to the woman. You ask what's happening. She says, "The curse is old, weak. He borrowed it." From who? Someone who hates being ignored. She won't say more. You begin watching Menandros from the edge of your land. You pretend to fix your gate. You pretend to pick herbs. He doesn't notice, or he does, and pretends not to. One evening, you see him bury something, near the border. Quickly. You wait until dark. You dig where he dug. You find a lead tablet, folded, wrapped in wool, etched with crooked writing. You cannot read it, but you understand. You bury it again, deeper. Then, in a different patch of soil, you bury another bundle of twigs. You add garlic, salt, your blood. Just a drop. You do not ask the woman this time. You just act. You begin walking your vineyard with olive oil on your fingers, touching each vine. You sing, badly. You whisper your father's name. You burn thyme in a cracked bowl. You start sleeping better. The grapes don't grow faster, but they stop dying. Menandros stops smiling. And in town, people start saying other things. Heron's land is waking. He cursed the curse. Maybe the vines were only sleeping. You don't correct them. One day, Menandros approaches. Casually, he offers you wine. Too sweet. He says, "Strange season." You say nothing. He smiles. You both know. You both say nothing. You go home. That night a storm breaks. The wind howls. The rain washes the dust from your roof. And in the morning, the vines smell alive, like breath, like promise. You press your hand to the bark. It's warm, and you wonder, if curses are just words buried in fear, what happens when we answer with belief? The vines no longer wither. But they don't flourish either. They hang in the in-between, alive but cautious, as if the land is waiting to be convinced. You feel the same. It's been 3 weeks since you buried the lead tablet deeper, since you pressed your blood into the soil and whispered your father's name to the wind. Something changed. You can feel it in the quiet. The soil isn't so dry. The leaves don't curl quite as tightly. The silence around the vineyard no longer hums with suspicion. But it's not gone. Not yet. Menandros has grown quiet too. He no longer sings in the morning. He no longer whistles when he walks his rows. You've seen him glance across the ravine more often than before. Not openly, just sideways, just often enough to know he feels something shifting. You still walk your rows, each morning, each dusk, sometimes with oil on your fingertips like before, sometimes with water soaked in bay leaves. You don't know why it works. You only know that when you stop, the vines seem to tremble more in the wind. You've stopped calling it nonsense. Even your son, who once rolled his eyes when you mentioned the old woman, asks if the vines are still cursed. You tell him no. You tell him the earth is tired, but you say it softly, as if the vines might overhear and disagree. The old woman visits unannounced. She walks your rows without asking. She stops by the first vine, the one you buried the twig bundle under, and kneels. She digs with her hands. You don't stop her. She finds the bundle. It's still there, still dry, but one of the strings is broken. She frowns. That's not good. You ask why. She shrugs. Something answered you, but not all the way. You ask what that means. She stands, wipes her hands on her robe. It means you undid a knot. but the thread still lingers. You don't understand. She doesn't explain. Instead, she pulls something from her satchel, a small glass vial, cloudy green, with a cork sealed in wax. She presses it into your hand. Pour this under the biggest vine. At dawn. Don't look away while it sinks. You ask what's inside. She says, a memory. You don't ask more. She leaves. That night you don't sleep. You sit by the window, watching the vines breathe in moonlight. You think of your father's voice. Rough, steady, always asking you to watch the leaves for signs. He never said the word curse, but he believed in land that sulked, land that remembered insult, land that needed apology. At dawn, you walk to the largest vine. You uncork the vial. The smell is strange. Not sour, not sweet, like old stone, like cellar air. You pour it slowly. It glows slightly. The soil drinks it. You do not blink. The light fades. You wait. Nothing happens. But when you stand, your feet feel lighter, not stronger, just less anchored. You walk the rest of the rows. The leaves look flatter, less curled. Some have sprouted new shoots, thin green fingers stretching up. You feel them stretch toward you, not in need, but in recognition. Later that day, in town, you pass Menandros at the grain stall. He avoids your gaze. He pretends to examine the millet, but his hands shake slightly. You wonder if he buried more tablets, or if the tablet you found was only a decoy. You wonder how far he went, what he promised. Who answered? That night, you dream. You stand in your vineyard, but the vines are twice your height. They twist upward, endlessly. The sky is red. The soil is black and warm, like breath. Something whispers behind you. You turn. The woman stands at the edge of the field, watching. She says nothing. She holds a string. It leads into the earth. When you wake, there's dirt under your fingernails. You do not remember leaving your bed. You check the largest vine. It has bloomed. 5 clusters. Plump. Too early for the season. You touch them. Warm. You do not smile. It doesn't feel like a gift. It feels like proof. The vines are listening. They are waiting. You go to the woman again. You ask what's still here. She sighs. Menandros didn't curse your vines. He cursed your name. You blink. My name. Names are roots, she says. He poisoned yours. How do I fix it? She gives you a small knife. Bronze. Blunt. Write your name in the soil. All of it. Even the part you don't speak aloud. You ask what she means. She only says, names passed from mothers count twice. You do it that evening. You kneel by the first vine. You carve your name with the knife. You include your mother's name, her mother's too. You whisper them. The wind stirs. The sky does not change, but the vine bows slightly. The next morning, Menandros is gone. No one knows where. His house stands open. His vines are shriveled. The barrels overturned. You do not celebrate. You walk your vineyard in silence. The vines are green. The grapes are growing. But you whisper anyway. You place oil on your fingers. You touch the leaves. And in your chest you wonder, if a curse was placed not on your land, but on the memory of you, how long before that memory forgets? The vines forgive slowly, not all at once, not with a flourish of green or the bursting of grapes, but in soft, quiet changes, a new shoot where rot once clung, a scent of damp sweetness in the air, a bee returning to hover over the blossoms. You count them like blessings, but not aloud. To speak them would be to break them. 3 weeks have passed since you wrote your name in the soil, since you whispered the names of your mother and grandmother, the parts of yourself you rarely acknowledged, let alone honoured. You don't fully understand why it worked, only that it did. The vines stand straighter now. The smallest row, which you had nearly given up on, stretches again toward the rising sun. They creak less in the wind. The leaves no longer hang like hands in grief. You do not thank the gods. You thank the soil, quietly. Each morning, as you pass the rows with your fingertips trailing along the stalks, you hum, not a song exactly, just a thread of breath, a rhythm, a pulse to remind the land that you are still here. You think of Mandros less now, but not entirely. His house remains abandoned. His vines, once so smug in their fullness, have browned like burnt offerings. No one claims them. No one walks his path. You hear stories in the market that he fled, that he was cursed in return, that he went north to consult someone even stranger than the woman in the woods. You don't comment. You don't need to. What remains is not him, but the silence he left behind. And in that silence, you hear your vines again. There is still fear, of course. What if the curse was not undone, but merely buried deeper? What if the vines grow green now, only because something waits again beneath them? But even fear, when lived with long enough, becomes a neighbour. You know how to greet it. You know how to walk past it. The old woman returns, without being called. She stands at the border of your land, just before the slope dips toward where Mendros's fields begin. You offer her wine. She declines. She kneels, touches the soil, tastes it. You do not question. She looks at you. It's not angry anymore. You nod. But it remembers, she adds. You nod again. She presses something into your hand. A stone, smooth, cold. Keep this in your pocket when you walk the rows. When you die, leave it under the largest vine. It will remind the land of who you were. You don't ask what kind of stone it is. You already know. It's not protection. It's a promise. That memory will hold, even when muscle fades and name wears away. You begin teaching your grandson to walk the rows. He is 7. His hands are small. He picks grapes before they're ripe. He asks too many questions. He thinks the soil smells bad, but he listens, and that is enough. You show him the oldest vine, the one that nearly died, the one that now blooms with quiet dignity. You tell him, "This vine knows my name." He laughs. You say, "Yours too if you let it." He nods, uncertain. You hand him the oil, teach him how to touch the bark lightly, how to whisper, not to the gods but to the dirt. He asks what to say. You tell him, anything you want remembered, and so, each morning now, he walks with you. He touches the vines. He whispers nonsense, stories about frogs and clouds. It doesn't matter. He is offering part of himself, and the land listens. You have not returned to the old woman. You do not need to. She gave you enough. You still keep the knife she gave you, the one used to write your name in the soil. It sits beside your oil flask, wrapped in cloth. You have not buried another bundle. You do not plan to. But sometimes, when you feel the wind shift strangely, or the bees buzz in a pattern that makes your skin tighten, you walk to the western edge, the old border. You kneel. You press your palm to the soil. You say nothing, and the land says nothing back. But it's a listening silence, not a vengeful one, and that is enough. One day you will not rise again. Your legs will give out. Your hands will still. The vines will go on without you, but they will remember, because of your name, because of the soil, because you dared to answer a curse not with vengeance but with memory, breath and quiet forgiveness. And in the spring that follows, when your grandson touches the oldest vine and feels its bark warm under his fingers, he may not know why, but he will speak, and the land will hear him. And in the hush of a windless morning, you ask yourself one last question. If we are made of dust, and curses are buried in it, then are we not also the ones who can pull them out? Your name is Thessa. You are 13 years old. You were not born into slavery, but you do not remember the day you were sold. It was early spring. You recall the smell of thyme and wet wool, and a woman's voice saying, "She has clever hands." You've lived for 6 years now in the home of Diodorus, a wealthy merchant in the city of Thebes. You have 2 tasks: fetch water and tend to the mistress's medicines. The water is simple, the medicines are not. Your mistress Carlianera suffers from weak breath. Her lungs rattle in the cold, her chest tightens with dust. The physicians say she is delicate, and that she must not be startled or exposed to too much sun. So you prepare the herbs: lavender, mallow, horehound. You grind them with a bronze pestle you keep hidden beneath a linen cloth. You heat them carefully in an old clay bowl over a small flame that you whisper to before lighting. You never speak the old words aloud. Not in this house, not in this city, but you think them. You remember your mother's voice, low, rhythmic, barely a murmur. She used to chant as she rubbed crushed leaves into the soles of your feet. When your brother had fever, she tied basil into his wrist and sang until his sweat broke. Your mother was not a physician. She was just knowing. That's what people in your village called it. Not magic, not worship, just knowing. The kind passed between women like bread dough, always different, always warm. You remember the words. You remember them even though you've promised, again and again, that you do not. Calianera trusts you. More than she should. She lets you mix the tea. She believes you have a soft touch. She praises you when her lungs ease. But you never tell her what else you do. You never tell her that you draw symbols under the bowls before placing them on the coals. You never tell her that you breathe 3 times over the steam and think of your mother's face. You never tell her that when she was nearly lost last winter, and the physician said, "Prepare for her to pass," you buried a clove of garlic at the foot of her bed, and whispered the forbidden words, "Come not here, cold breath. Come not here," and she lived. You are not a witch. You are a girl. You do not claim power. You only claim memory. There is another girl in the house, Celia. She is 2 years older. She scrubs the floors. She once saw you rub thyme into the mistress's cup and asked, "Why do you do that before the water boils?" You said, "For the smell." She believed you, but now she watches more carefully. One night, she asks where you learnt to treat coughs. You say, "I watched the physician." She nods, but her eyes linger. You start working faster, quieter. The old words come more easily now. Not aloud, never aloud. But when your hands move, they echo through you. You don't remember learning them, only that you were never taught. You were shown. When Calianera worsens again in early autumn, the physician prescribes honeyed wine and prayer. You prepare both. You also steep crushed bay leaf into a pillowcase. That night she sleeps soundly. The next morning she smiles. "You're lucky," she says. You nod. You are not lucky. You are careful. You are watching. At the back of the house is a storeroom with dried herbs. Officially, it is for the cook, but you know the real purpose. The family keeps it for emergencies, times of plague, times of childbirth, times when the gods are far away. You visit it often. You rearrange the jars. You label them in ink when no one is looking. Not with names, but with symbols only you understand. A curl for open breath. A line for easy sleep. A dot for sweat. Sometimes you light a wick and place it in the farthest corner. You whisper, "Protect this room. Let no poison enter." You do not know if it works. But the herbs stay dry, and the rats stay away. The master, Diodoros, travels often. He never speaks to you unless something is missing. You do not like his eyes. They are too fast, like hands. When he returns one evening with a limp and a fever, Calianera panics. She orders the physician. She orders more incense. She prays to Apollo. You prepare the bed. You fetch cold water. And that night, you take a dried sprig of feverwort and place it under the mattress. You whisper, "Take this fire. Take it far. Take it low." By morning, his fever breaks. He does not thank you. No one thanks you. But they keep you. You think that is thanks enough. And yet, there is danger. You know that. You've heard stories. Girls accused of sorcery for less. Girls sent away, whipped, burned, not because they cursed, but because they knew, and knowledge in the wrong body is always dangerous. So you hide the words deeper. You work with silence, but sometimes, just sometimes, you ask yourself, if I am never allowed to speak what I know, will it someday forget me? The silence of the house grows thick. It always does when Diodorus is sick. He does not like to be seen unwell, so doors stay closed. Curtains stay drawn. Servants move quietly. Meals are left outside his door. Everyone pretends not to hear him cough. But you hear. You always hear. The sound rattles like wet cloth being wrung. The kind of cough that shakes the bones. That comes with sweat and a strange dry smell, like cracked eggshells and vinegar. He is worse this time. Even Calianera is afraid. The physician comes twice a day now. He brings potions. He burns incense. He whispers prayers to Apollo and Asclepius, but you can see it in his hands, they tremble as he writes. You bring cool cloths. You clean the vomit. You are asked to boil the medicinal herbs, to grind the roots, and you do. But not just what the physician prescribes. You begin to reach deeper into memory. You fetch a bundle wrapped in linen, hidden behind the back wall of the herb storeroom. It's old, from before, from the village. Your mother gave it to you the night before you were taken. You unwrap it carefully. Inside, dried poppy, mugwort, something black you've never named. You grind it together. You whisper the words. You do not say them aloud. You sing them in your breath. At the fire, you draw a symbol with your finger into the ash before placing the bowl to heat. A curl, a dot, a line. You boil it low. You skim the foam. You pour it into a cup that no one else will touch. You leave it outside Diodorus's door. You say nothing. The next morning, the fever has broken. His coughing softens. His breathing steadies. He asks for wine. Kolianira weeps with relief. The physician calls it divine favor. You say nothing, but Celia watches you. She has been watching more closely. She's seen the symbols you trace in the ash, the sprigs you hide under pillows. She says nothing directly, but the next day when you pass her in the corridor, she mutters, "Witch," quiet, just loud enough for you to hear. You stop. You look at her. She does not stop scrubbing the floor. You walk away. But the word follows you. That night you sleep badly. You dream of your mother. She stands in a dark room, grinding herbs with fingers blackened by ink. She does not speak. She only nods toward the window. Outside a crowd gathers. Torches, shadows, a word rising like smoke. Witch. You wake. Your mouth is dry. Your hands shake. You go to the storeroom. You unwrap the last of the herbs. You grind them slowly. You fold them into linen. You bury them in the ash pit behind the house. You whisper, "Sleep now. Rest. Be quiet." You do not make tea that day. You do not draw symbols. You speak only the physician's words. You watch the colour return to Diodorus's face and feel no comfort, because you know what comes next. Someone has seen too much. Koliana calls you to her chamber. She is sitting upright, stronger than you've seen her in months. She smiles. She says, "You've done well." You bow. She continues, "But Celia says you've been doing extra, that you whisper to the walls, that you light flames with strange words." You say nothing. She leans forward. "I've never believed in sorcery, Thessa. I believe in medicine, in order, in gods who reward discipline." You nod. She watches you for a long moment. Then she says, "But I also believe in what works." You blink. She gestures to a pouch on the table. Silver coins. A small scroll. "These are yours. You are being released." You don't understand. "You're selling me?" "No. You're free. Your price is paid." "By whom?" No one says. Perhaps the gods. Perhaps someone else. Perhaps fear. You take the pouch, the scroll. You do not thank her. You do not cry. You bow. That night you leave the house. No one sees you go. No one stops you. You walk until your feet ache. You walk until the city ends. You sleep under a fig tree. You do not light a fire. In the morning, you find a small village by the river. You ask if they need a healer. They ask, "Are you trained?" You say, "Not by men." They nod. They let you stay. You tend wounds. You prepare teas. You grind roots. You teach the girls to breathe over the flame before setting the pot. You teach them the curl, the dot, the line. You do not speak the old words aloud. Not yet, but you mouth them when no one is looking, because you are free, but still cautious, and still carrying the memory of what healed those who could not speak for themselves. One day, a woman in the village coughs, deep, sharp. You recognize the sound. You know what herbs to boil. You know what breath to give. You do, and as the steam rises, you ask yourself, if a silence saved someone's life, does it still count as magic, or only memory? You thought moving would help. The old place was too small, too damp, too close to the fish market. The stairs creaked, the drains gurgled, and your children coughed through every winter. So when Demarian found the new house twice the size, with smooth walls, clean stone floors and a courtyard shaded by pomegranate trees, you said yes. You are Mira, 37, mother of 3, wife of a man who fixes wagons and speaks rarely but kindly. You live now in a 2-story house in the quieter part of Ephesus, near the edge of the hillside, where the sea winds don't carry as much rot. The house is old, but restored. You didn't ask what it was before. You wish you had. At first, things are fine. The rooms are airy. The doors close properly. The walls don't crumble when you hang a lamp. But the first time you try to leave, really leave, something changes. It starts small. A belt you packed the night before is missing. You search the kitchen, the bedroom, The baskets. You find it eventually looped around the statue of Hestia in the courtyard shrine. You didn't put it there. You laugh it off. Your husband shrugs. Strange, he says. The next time, it's your daughter's shoes, then your son's toy flute, then your list of things to buy at the market gone from the table, found in the cold ashes of the stove. None of it feels menacing, just persistent. Like the house has a different idea about how your day should go. The first time you manage to leave properly, everyone washed, dressed, shoes on. You return to find the door ajar. You always latch it. Inside, nothing is stolen, but the rug in the entryway is gone. You find it 2 days later in the attic, rolled and tied with twine. Your husband thinks it's mice. Big mice, you say. He shrugs. That night you sprinkle salt across the doorstep. Just a pinch, an old habit from your grandmother. She used to say, salt reminds the house who owns it. You don't know if she meant it literally. You do it anyway. The next morning, the salt is gone, swept, not scattered, not blown away. Swept. You ask your children, they say no. You ask the neighbour's boy, he says he saw someone standing in your doorway after sunset, but it wasn't anyone real. You ask what he means. He says, it didn't make footsteps. You do not sleep well that night. Still, life continues. The house stays quiet during the day. The courtyard fills with bees and pomegranate blossoms. You cook, you clean, you whisper small thanks to the kitchen shrine. But things move, always small things, never loudly. Once, a comb disappears for a week. When it returns, it is damp, as if left beside a bath. You stop trying to explain it. You stop asking. Instead, you begin to mark things. You place string beneath the corner of the bed frame, a sprig of rosemary in the broom handle, a handful of beans behind the hearthstone. Old rituals, women's rituals, things passed from mouths to hands, not scrolls. The kind of knowledge your grandmother called soft shields. Demarion notices, but says nothing. He does not laugh. Not after the key to the front door disappeared for 3 days and was found, neatly tucked into the fold of your pillowcase, still warm, as if it had just been placed there. One morning, your youngest child, Irenaeus, wakes up crying. He says the house won't let go of his blanket. You go to his room. The blanket is tangled in the bed frame, knotted strangely. You have to cut it loose. That evening, you leave a bowl of milk near the courtyard steps. You whisper, we are guests, but guests may leave. The next morning, the milk is gone, the bowl is clean. You don't speak of it. You begin keeping salt by the doors again, but this time, you do not sprinkle. You pour, a ring around the threshold. Your eldest daughter frowns. Isn't that wasteful? You nod. Yes, but you do it anyway. The door stays shut that day. You do not find anything misplaced. The house feels still, as if watching, as if listening. That night, a jar falls from the shelf. No wind, no footsteps. It breaks. Inside is not olive oil. Inside is a stone, smooth, dark, not yours. You sweep it up. You place it in the kitchen shrine. You say, you have your memories, we have ours. The next morning, a breeze moves through the house. It smells like honey and ash. And in the soft warmth of the kitchen, you ask yourself, if a house remembers every voice that ever called it home, what happens when it wants one back? You stop trying to leave, not because you are trapped, but because now, every time you prepare to go, something answers. Last time, the door would not open. The bolt turned, the latch moved, but the door clung to the frame like skin to bone. It took your husband, your daughter, and a wooden wedge to pull it free. The wood groaned, the wall shook, but it opened. You left, you returned, and found everything rearranged. Not broken, not ruined, just moved. Cups facing the wrong direction, shoes turned heel to toe, your daughter's hair ribbon braided around the stair rail, and in the centre of the kitchen table, a pile of salt, perfectly poured, a little hill, not yours. You stared at it for a long time. You didn't clean it. You swept around it. That night, the air inside the house felt warmer than it should have. No wind, no fire, just warmth, like breath on your neck. Your grandmother used to say, when the house breathes, it's listening. You'd never understood what that meant until now. You whisper more these days, little things. When you open the shutters, let the light be soft. When you stir the stew, let the mouths be fed. When you sweep the floor, take the sorrow with you. Not spells, not prayers, just soft shields. You find new ways to mark the rooms. Salt under the stairs, a mirror tucked behind the grain jar, a black thread wrapped around the front latch. You don't say why you do it, but the house seems to understand. It stops hiding your belongings. It starts returning them more gently. Once you left your earring by the basin. You found it later, not in the ash or under the bed, but placed gently beside the hearth with a sprig of thyme, like an apology or a gift. Your husband says little. He fixes what needs fixing. He hums while he works, but sometimes you catch him muttering when he opens the door. You can't hear the words, but you recognize the tone. He's speaking to the house too. One night, you find your eldest daughter placing stones on the windowsill. 3 small ones, lined up by colour. You ask her what they're for. She shrugs. They help me sleep. You say nothing. You add a 4th stone. The next morning, the stones are in a new order. No one touched them, at least no one human. That's when you begin to believe it fully. This house is not haunted. It is inhabited. Not by ghosts, not exactly. Not by gods either, just memory. Pressed deep into the walls, stirred by your presence, as if the house is remembering how to be lived in again. You start writing things down, not for anyone else, just in case the house forgets again. You write, "We eat at dusk. We sweep widowsins on Mondays. We whisper, not shout. We leave honey for the windowsill spirit. We do not take more than we give." Your youngest draws little circles beside the lines. You hang the list in the kitchen. The paper never gathers dust. One evening, you forget to leave salt by the back door. That night, the wind howls louder than it should. The shutters slam. The cat won't enter the house. You leave the salt in the morning. You whisper, "We forgot, we remember now." The wind dies. The shutters still. The cat returns. No one speaks of leaving anymore. You still go to the market, to the baths, to visit your sister near the port, but you always come back before nightfall. You always step over the salt line. You always greet the threshold with your breath. Sometimes, strangers visit, a trader, a cousin, a friend of Damarian. They feel uncomfortable in the house. They stand oddly, speak too loud. They leave quickly. You do not invite them back. The house has its preferences. You're beginning to understand them. And when your youngest has a fever one night, burning and wild-eyed, you know what to do. You do not call the physician. You do not make an offering at the temple. You light a candle. You place it at the foot of the bed. You rub oil into his feet. You whisper, "Keep him. Let him rest. Let him stay." The fever breaks before dawn. You wake to find the candle melted into the shape of a curled hand. You keep the wax. You tuck it into the rafters. It feels right. Everything now feels like a conversation. You step lightly. You offer things. You say thank you. And you wonder, if a house learns to love the people inside it, can it also learn to let them go? The house knows you now, not as a visitor, not as a tenant, as its own. It no longer hides things from you. Instead, it tucks them into places where you'll find them when you most need them. Your hair comb, once missing, appears on the day your nerves are frayed. A lost coin returns when the merchant gives you the wrong change. A splintered spoon is gone, and a new one lies beside the hearth. You thank it. You no longer speak these thanks aloud. Not always. Sometimes you just breathe gently into the corners. Sometimes you press your hand to the wall. Sometimes you leave a bit of bread on the step. The bread is always gone by morning. Your daughter begins leaving notes. Tiny scraps of papyrus rolled and tucked under the threshold brick. She writes, "We are kind. We fixed the leak. Please stop creaking on rainy nights." And once, "Will you remember us when we go? You found that one. You didn't remove it. You added one of your own. We're not leaving yet." The house creaked once that night. Just once. Not loud, not warning, almost like acknowledgement. You wonder how many people lived here before you. How many sets of hands stirred pots over the same fire. How many soft songs were hummed at the same window. How many feet paced the floor, hearts full of grief, joy, dread. You wonder if any of them tried to leave, and whether the house let them, because lately you've started wondering what will happen when the time comes. Not now, but someday, Someday your children will marry. Damarian will grow too stiff to lift barrels. You'll want smaller rooms, lighter walls, and the house may not want that. Already it reacts when you speak of change. When Damarian suggested replacing the kitchen tiles, the oven stopped lighting for 3 days. When your eldest daughter sketched out a plan to build a bath in the courtyard, she found her chalk snapped in half, twice. Now, she speaks of such things only outdoors. You never speak of moving anymore. You don't know if that's fear, or something closer to respect. Still, you begin to prepare, not to escape, but to say goodbye properly. You clean corners you've never cleaned before. You press oil into the doors with your fingertips. You whisper at the stove, the rafters, the drain, one at a time, one breath at a time. You begin to teach your daughter what your grandmother taught you, and what the house has taught you since. Salt first, then stones, then names. Stones don't break promises. Salt remembers things the mind forgets. And names are the deepest spell. One night, you find your daughter curled in the corner of the kitchen, speaking to the wall. You don't interrupt, you only listen. She says, "We've made room for you. Can you make room for us?" The air in the kitchen stirs, the candle flickers, and you know, the house is still deciding. A week later, Damarian tells you his cousin is building near Pergamon, a vineyard. He says there's space for a second house, for all of you. He says it gently. He does not expect you to say yes. But he asks. You don't answer for 3 days. You walk the rooms. You step over the salt. You sweep the corners. You feel the house watching. It does not stop you. It does not move anything. It simply waits. On the 4th morning, you find a ring of black beans on the doorstep, perfectly arranged. In the center, one word written in dust. Go. Not command. Permission. You breathe deep. You cry, but not from fear. The house has released you. You tell your family. They begin packing slowly, respectfully. You take down the list from the kitchen. You fold it. You do not burn it. You place it in a jar and leave it in the attic. Your daughter tucks her window stones into a pouch, but leaves one behind. You hang fresh herbs on the doorframe, not for you, but for whoever comes next. And the night before you leave, you do one final thing. You scatter a line of salt across the threshold. Then carefully, you step over it, and you whisper, "We remember you. Remember us gently." No wind answers, no creak, no chill, just stillness and peace, and the warmth of a place that has let go without forgetting. And as you walk down the hill toward a new home you do not yet know, you wonder, if homes remember the people who loved them, do they also dream of being loved again? You are Isadora of Massilia. You are 53 years old. Your fingers still tremble when you grind cloves, though not from weakness, just memory. Your husband died 7 months ago. People in the neighborhood called him the good apothecary, and he was steady hands, clear eyes, and the habit of singing to his jars. He kept everything in order, herbs labeled in Greek, tinctures arranged by bitterness, and scrolls tied in waxed thread, always aligned east to west, so the sun will find the words. He used to say, "You never learned how to mix the things yourself." He never insisted, but you listened. You remembered. After his funeral, the shop stayed closed. You hung laurel at the door and locked the apothecary's drawers. The shutters remained drawn, but people still knocked. They still needed wormwood, anise, rosewater. They still asked for help sleeping, or soothing a child's cough, or forgetting a name whispered in anger. You turned most of them away, until one evening, in the salt-heavy dusk, a girl knocked and simply said, "Please." You made the sleeping draught from memory. It worked, and so you reopened, just a little. You sold what was already bottled. You burned what had spoiled. You swept the floors with olive branches. You sprinkled vinegar in the corners. Your grandmother's trick for settling restless walls. And one day, while reaching for an old jar of mastic gum, your sleeve caught on a hook behind the shelf. It opened a hidden drawer. You didn't know your husband had hidden drawers. Inside, a scroll, sealed with red wax. No title, no god's name, just a symbol pressed into the wax, a crescent moon beneath 2 crossed lines. You set it aside, but the next morning, it had moved, not far, just to the edge of the table. Your house has never been haunted, but you've lived long enough to recognize invitation when you see it. So you broke the seal. The scroll was not written in Greek, nor Latin, but you could read it. That was the strangest part. The letters bent like smoke. The lines shifted slightly when your eyes left them, but you could read them. Not with effort, not like translation, like memory. The words didn't say what to do. They said what had been done. 3 sprigs placed in boiling wine at dawn will bring memory of the child's name. Salted ink rubbed into the temple of the skull at midnight will show the face last seen before death. Bitter herbs sewn into the left sleeve will protect the wearer from lies. You read for hours. The ink never smudged, the scroll never curled, and when you looked up, the room felt slightly warmer. You made tea. The pot did not boil. You whispered please. The flame rose. After that, you began testing small things. First, the herbs. You tried the one for headaches, marjoram, bay, and a word you didn't know how to pronounce, so you hummed it instead. It worked. Then protection. You stitched parsley and bone-dry lavender into your apron hem. The beggar who usually tried to trick you with false ailments paused in your doorway, sniffed the air and said, "Never mind." Then, forgetting, a woman came to you, shaking, asking for something to erase a soldier's name from her mind. You opened the scroll. You whispered what you could not say aloud. You mixed the powder, burned it, let her inhale the smoke. The next morning, she returned and said, "I think I feel lighter. I can't remember why." You kept the scroll locked after that, but not hidden. You started sleeping with it beneath your pillow, and the dreams changed. You saw your husband, but younger, not the man you buried. He was writing by candlelight, the scroll open before him. You watched as he inked a line you hadn't yet read. To read is not to own. To speak is not to control. Magic listens, and sometimes it waits. You woke with the word waits echoing in your ears. You began to suspect something, that he hadn't written the scroll. He had copied it. From where? You didn't know, but the scroll knew you, because it waited for you. One afternoon, a boy came in, barely 10. He said his mother was sick, bleeding. He said her words had stopped coming out right. You went with him. The woman lay still, breathing shallow, her mouth moving with no sound. You felt her pulse. You looked in her eyes, and you remembered a line from the scroll. The silence that follows the wrong word can be soothed by letting the old syllables walk the room. You whispered. You didn't know what you said. You only knew how it felt. The air in the room bent slightly, not warmer, not colder, just bent, like the shape of breath. The woman exhaled sharply and said her son's name. You left quietly. You said nothing. That night you found your husband's writing tools beneath the floorboard where the scroll had been. His ink pot still had some liquid in it. You dipped a reed, and in the margin of the scroll where space remained, you wrote, "Still listening, still learning, still here." The ink shimmered and held, and the next morning a new line appeared below yours. Then keep going. You ask yourself now, as the shutters glow with early light, if a book can wait for the right hands. Does it know when it's being read with love or only with fear? Your hands are steadier now. You've been mixing small things, safely, slowly, nothing grand, nothing reckless, just memory work, just remembering. But the scroll remembers more than you. Some mornings, new lines are there, softly added, tucked at the edges, where no room was before. You do not see them appear, they're just there. Once it says, to hold a name is to shape it. To speak it in silence is to bind it gently. You're not sure what that means. But later that day, a woman arrives carrying a clay figurine with her stillborn son's name carved beneath its feet. She asks what to do with it. You hesitate, and then you remember the scroll's line. You tell her, wrap it in cloth, place it in the river, speak the name softly, once, then let it go. She does. She returns a week later, eyes clear, voice soft. She says nothing. She doesn't need to. You add a note in the scroll's margin. This worked. Another line appears beneath it the next morning, because you listened. You begin to suspect the scroll doesn't just record spells, it converses. You test it. You write, "Are you only memory?" The next day, not only, also intention. You ask, "My husband, did he hear you?" The reply comes slowly. Faint ink, fainter still than the rest. He copied. You interpret. You sit with that. You wonder how long he had read the scroll, why he never spoke of it, whether it frightened him, or whether he was waiting to see if you would find it. You start reading his old notes. There aren't many. He was not a man of journals. He recorded remedies, doses, symptoms, but no dreams, no signs, no admissions of anything unusual, except one line, scribbled in the margin of a list of herbs. She hears what I miss. You know it was about you. You cry for a little while, but it's not grief. Not exactly. It's something else. A kind of relief. Because now, when people come to your shop, you don't just reach for jars and bottles. You reach for the scroll. Not openly, not theatrically. You read a line. Let it hum in your mouth. You never say it aloud unless you understand the feeling of it. That's something you've learned. Magic is not command. It's companionship. It responds to the shape of your breath, the tilt of your need, the way you offer, not demand its presence. One man comes with a cough that hasn't left for months. You brew him tea, just tea. But before you serve it, you touch the steam and say, not yet. He drinks. 3 days later, he returns, clear-eyed. He doesn't ask what you did. You wouldn't know how to explain it. Another comes with a complaint that her shadow feels heavy. You know what she means. You whisper to the space behind her. You give her nettle and hyssop for bathing, and she leaves with her head higher. Not every visit is a mystery. Some are just wounds and fever and rest. But even then, the scroll teaches you how to ask better questions. It teaches you patience. It teaches you silence. And slowly, your reputation begins to shift. You are not just the widow of the good apothecary. You are the woman who listens, not to gossip, to spaces, to wait, to pause. People begin leaving small offerings at your door. Nothing grand, just things that say we're grateful. Fresh bread, a smooth stone, a child's drawing of you with stars for eyes. You hang that one above the shelf. You begin teaching a girl from the port. Her name is Ligeia. She's clever and calm. You don't show her the scroll. Not yet, but you test her gently. You ask, what does time do? She says, cleans wounds. You say, what does time ask for? She frowns. Light. You nod. She's learning. You ask her once, do you think herbs have voices? She says, I think they have memories. You give her extra honey that day. One evening, you dream again. Your husband sits beside the scroll, not writing this time, but listening. The room is full of breath, like the walls are breathing with him. He says nothing. He just nods. You wake with tears drying on your temples. You tell the scroll, I miss him. The reply comes 2 days later. He left knowing you would speak. And then a second line. Keep listening. The scroll has more to say, more to teach. But you begin to wonder, if the book is alive, if memory can respond, what does it want in return? The ink doesn't move anymore. Not for several days. You wake early. You light the oil lamp. You unroll the scroll slowly, carefully. And for once, nothing new waits for you. No shimmering phrases, no new margins, no lines nudged into the corners of old instructions, just what has already been written. You try writing something yourself. Are you still here? But no reply comes. You wait again. Then you stop waiting, because by now you've learnt something. Silence is not absence. Sometimes it's trust, and sometimes it's permission. So you begin to act on your own. A boy comes to you with a fever and a rash like poppy seeds. You open your jars, you measure carefully, but you don't consult the scroll. You place a rosemary bundle in hot water. You chant, not from the scroll, but from your grandmother's voice, long folded into memory. Let heat pass, let dreams return, let bones cool gently. The fever breaks that night. The next day, you find the scroll slightly warm to the touch. Still no new ink, just warmth, like breath on the back of the hand. You begin to write in the margins anyway. Not questions, not even spells, just observations. Ligeia hears when the tea begins to bubble before the pot whistles. The mint in the corner pot bloomed again after the thunder. I sang to the poppy seeds last night. The scroll does not respond, but it also does not fade. It listens, perhaps, or waits. That has become your rhythm now. Not waiting for answers, but recording what is already known, what's been lived, what's felt. The apothecary shop feels full again. Not busy, not loud, just lived in. The shelves are orderly, but no longer rigid. The herb bundles hang where they like the light. The scroll sits near the window now, open to a page you've marked with a faded ribbon. Sometimes a customer will glance at it, then look away, unsure why they feel like it's watching. You don't explain. Some things don't want explaining. Some things are simply present. Ligeia asks you one day, "Did your husband know this was magic?" You smile. You say, "I think he knew it was more than medicine." She nods, then asks, "Is it dangerous?" You pause, then answer, "Only when ignored, or treated like a weapon." She nods again, satisfied. That night, she leaves a dried olive leaf on the scroll. You don't know why, but the next morning, it's gone. You teach her the rhythm of your work. Not the recipes, the rhythm. How to wait before opening a jar. How to look into the mouth of a bottle and see the scent. How to know when a patient is asking for help versus when they are asking to be heard. These are not lessons you write down. These are things that must be lived, like the scroll, which still doesn't write back, but you no longer need it to. Because one morning you open the scroll to a page you know well and find your own handwriting, clear and complete where it never was before. Magic is memory carried forward through kindness. It listens, it waits, and when it is ready, it gives its voice to those who use it gently. You did not write this, but the letters are yours. You close the scroll, you breathe, you know what it means. The scroll is no longer teaching, because you are no longer the student. That afternoon, you take a piece of fresh parchment, and for the first time, you begin your own book. You don't copy spells, you write what you've lived, what you've heard. You begin the way your husband never did. "I was not meant to be a healer, but the house remembered me anyway." You write until the lamp flickers. Then you pause. You place your scroll, no longer mysterious, into the bottom drawer of your cabinet. You leave it unsealed. You leave it waiting, because someone, someday, may need to read what you once needed to read, and you hope they too will listen before they speak. As you set the lamp aside and stretch your fingers, you wonder if knowledge waits patiently for the right hands. Do we ever truly learn it? Or does it simply learn us?